Hello malt mates, welcome to the Whisky Bothy. I'm Ralphie, I review whisky, but sometimes I need malternatives. That is, malt alternatives fused into one word. Right. I'm not alone in using this terminology. You'll find one of the best informative whisky channels on the internet. It's called whiskyfun.com. Go and find it, malt mates, you won't be disappointed. And they have malternative moments where the proprietors, the aficionados, they review rums because they need to give their palate a change from whisky. One of the challenges that whisky drinkers have, or even rum drinkers have, is that we, without knowing it over time, we fatigue our palates with drinking approximations of the same style of alcohol. We're not drinking for quantity, we're drinking for quality. But within quality comes complexity. Our palate gets used to it. Our palate starts to get exhausted for it. And now and again, we just need to have a bit of dry time. And also after a dry time, just explore something that's a little bit different to stimulate our senses and give us points of reference. And I put it to you this way, particularly, and I know there's a few rum drinkers coming to check this review out, but I primarily review for whisky drinkers. And what I really notice is that whisky drinkers can institutionalise their palate into a certain range of flavours because it's just what they like. And it's familiar, and it's human nature to institutionalise and to make easier our connectivity with good quality alcohol. Rum aficionados do exactly the same thing, which is why rum drinkers should buy some Scotch whisky now and again. And for the whisky drinkers, a very important question. Why does the whisky drinker, particularly of single malts, have absolutely no problem in drinking whisky which has been finished and double matured and has spent time in ex-rum casks, and yet don't want to actually buy a bottle of rum? It doesn't make sense. When you're a whisky drinker and you buy rum, it lets you understand how these rum casks are working that are being used to mature and to finish whisky. It's a simple equation. It's really good for any whisky drinker to have one alternative spirit in the stash. Probably several would be even better, but one step at a time. So I'm talking about, this is a rum I've just reviewed, and I've been keeping an eye on Scottish rum for a while. Rum has really gone global. It's always been the most globally made spirit on the planet, but now it's getting even more so. We're seeing rum being made in Iceland. We're seeing rum being made in Mongolia. We're seeing little rum distilleries pop up on obscure Polynesian islands that we've never even heard of, simply because it's not on our radar and it's not available for us to buy. But that's changing. The whole shape of the rum industry is changing dramatically. There's more people considering, to put into perspective, that rum has been 95% a mixing spirit, mixed traditionally with fruit juices and with other flavour ingredients into cocktails, mojitos and caipirinhas and all the rest of it. We tend to find that not a lot of regular drum drinkers actually sip their drums neat. And when the rum producers are producing the luxury versions, particularly in the Caribbean and South America, what they're doing is they're sugaring up. They're creating a sort of dark brown prune juice. They're putting it in a fancy flask and grotesquely overpricing. And this is a problem we have as whisky drinkers taking our whisky knowledge into the rum scene. We're already pretty discerning before we even start, because we have some experience with an alternative spirit. And we can see that already within the rum scene, there is a reputation for shenanigans, as was exposed quite a number of years ago now, where the levels of actual sugar put into rum, because there is no regulation of the rum industry at all, none. Rum distillers are left to set their own standards. And this is why we home in on better quality distilleries like Foursquare, where there is a relative transparency and there is a relative affordability, and there's certainly availability of their rum, particularly in the UK, where I'm buying my rum. This is such an interesting story to follow. I'm going to take the rest of this review here to talk a little bit about background, bottle background, when we start to take a real interest beyond the average consumer who just wants their tiki approximation and then they're over it, they've moved on to social media, whatever. When we take an interest, we start to dig in a little bit more. We start to dig in a little bit deeper. And this is where we find genuine, legitimate backstories which major global corporations simply cannot reproduce. They can only try and buy into. And even when they do, they screw it up. We're seeing this happening right now. Corporations are, particularly liquor corporations, unless they are fully privately owned, they are owned by stock market shareholders who will dictate just how bland, banal, sanitized, homogenized and neutered products become in order to ensure the presumed returns for stock market investors. Nobody screws a business harder than the financial industry. The financial industry is collectively a cartel. It is not a business. It is not a commercial business. That's what it is. Got to see things realistically. This is why we use this conspiracy theory knowledge, right? To say, right, I want to know more. I've got an inquiring mind. I feel a little bit of my Sherlock Holmes coming to the surface. So let's examine Jay Gow. Jay Gow, John Gow, to give him his real name, was an 18th century Orcadian, which is someone from Orkney, they're an Orcadian, pirate. And he was notorious. He was violent. He played a violent game. And subsequently he was caught and hanged. The first time round the rope broke, because he was a big chap from all his rich pickings as a pirate. But his legacy is actually, there's quite a few pirates come from Orkney. And I'm going to recommend a book to you. Here it is here. If you're a discerning, intelligent, articulate people, that's why you're watching this channel, you know. And this is a book by a writer called Daphne du Maurier. And the book is called Jamaica Inn. And it focuses on 18th century smuggling and the running trade, which has been very much glamorized now by the likes of the Pirates of the Caribbean and other sanitized deliveries. However, it was very messy and very, very dark. Assassins were regularly transferring themselves internationally through international smuggling and the running trade. And they would start out as shipwreckers to prove their ability in cold-blooded killing. And one of the most notorious islands, and I'm Scottish, so I know these things, for shipwreckers was Orkney. Heaven help any ship shipwrecked in the north of Scotland, because your chances of survival were extremely slim. Because in order to get the bounty, the booty, and the salvage from the ships, it was necessary to cut the throats of any survivors who didn't drown on these shipwrecks, because they were basically witnesses, they were evidence, they were an embarrassment, and Orkney in the 18th century was extremely poor, and people really struggled for survival simply because of their remoteness and the hostility of the climate, which did not allow for generous growth of crops. They were seafarers because they had no choice. In fact, you find that in the British Navy, many of the recruits, considering how harsh that was, would come from the Scottish and Irish Sea Islands. In fact, where the island I live on is famous for the officer class of seafarers, because it was just a necessary part of a ship's survival that the most competent people and capable people who could actually run and manage and hold a ship together got promoted. This book really gives you a dark, dark vision on the running trade, which included shipwrecking, where they would put up false lights above cliffs in order to drive ships onto the rocks, where they would break up in storms and inclement weather, and then literally the wood from the wrecked ships would float ashore, where it could be used for firewood, or for building sheds, or repairing boats, because it was boat grade wood. You know, I'm not even talking rum here, folks, yet. But rum, brandy, gin, any potable spirit in the 18th century was prime for smuggling, because literally after the Napoleonic Wars, the Rothschild family took over the Bank of England and they instituted organised tax raising with enforcement, which had been missing and lacking beforehand. They taxed salt, they taxed barley, they taxed all essentials which were necessary for the function of an average community. And the proceeds went into the Bank of England, which is why the City of London has become so powerful, and that the Crown Estate is so extraordinarily rich. You have no idea, maltmates. None. And here we have a modern rum tapping legitimately into that heritage, that legacy, that history, made on a tiny little windswept island, which is only held to the mainland with what's called the Churchill Barriers, which were created round about the Second World War time to hem in and connect and create a calmer sort of deep water harbour for the British Navy, and also ultimately for the confiscated German Navy, which was scuppered off the coast of Orkney. They could have salvaged the iron, but they decided not to. It was more important that they quickly put a powerful European navy before use, beyond use. And I'm talking about things that relate to this brand, but it's so much more deeper, fascinating information that we can find from the internet at our fingertips now, that was just totally beyond reach a generation ago. And it gives legitimacy, it gives a reason to why you've got a family of Dutch heritage connected to Orkney. Nothing new there then, it's been going on for generations, producing an articulate Dutch standard rum And bear in mind, Holland has, for hundreds of years, been a major rum centre in Europe, been a major rum merchant, which tends to be invisible even to many rum fans. They've never heard about Shear, the rum company, and their connections into Britain, into Liverpool, and the fact that some of the highest grade stocks of global rum are actually stored and matured in Bristol and Liverpool and in Glasgow, in amongst the whisky. As more and more whisky companies buy rum, and rum companies are buying into whisky, and we're seeing a significant change here. This really came on my radar. I was aware the distillery had started in 2017. It's when they got their liquor licence. Tiny little micro distillery. And they're not alone. There's a rum distillery for all you Fieschiel fans that are going to Fieschiel to see the Islay Rum Festival in all its glory and all its variety. And yet many of you are not even aware that the distillery at Port Ellen, Port Ellen is a rum distillery. Islay has a rum distillery producing good rum. Some of the best rum you'll find is Matuga, which is right halfway between Glasgow and Edinburgh. It's a rum distillery producing world-class rum. As a reviewer, I like to deep dive all this because I want to be the first to know about it so I can talk with some authority about it. This is why for the last couple of years I've not been going to whisky festivals. I've been going to rum festivals because there is a zeitgeist and there is a whole change going on in rum, and this is the place where you'll actually see it. I highly recommend it to you, particularly if you're a whisky drinker. It'll make a very, very refreshing change. I highly recommend buy tickets for the London Rum Show, which takes place at the Glazers building on the south bank of the River Thames, directly beside London Bridge, in the City of London, organised by the Whisky Exchange, and I've got to hand it to them. They've done a fabulous and very professional job of organising and controlling that rum festival. The last time I was there was 300 sipping rums. Yes, you heard me, 300 sipping rums available. And it was just what my palate needed as a very experienced whisky drinker. Now, I've covered a lot of ground here in this review, and I'm going to kind of summarise right now. It's not just the liquor itself. It's the history. It's the story. It's the explanation. Why is whisky what it is? The more we read in and explore the background of anything, the more that we are informed about not just the flavour, which we're primarily looking at, but for the reason for the flavour. Why is that flavour there? And it's all down to history. And it's history in relation to the present that lets us start to recalibrate, to know what to expect in the future. I'll leave that with you. Thanks for watching.